Did you miss me?
Well, everyone knew, I think, BloodRayne in those days, right? Like in the early 2000s. And yeah, because it was like a full-on 3D action game starring a badass vampire lady or vampire lady. So, it's very different. And, BloodRayne was published by Majesco. And before that, we had done Boy and His Blob with Majesco. So in a lot of ways, BloodRayne was it felt like a sequel to Boy and His Blob, kind of. Well, I mean, it's like a side-scrolling game that had animated characters, and so in a way, it felt like a totally natural progression from what we were working on, even though like the game projects and the tone and everything was like very, very different. So yeah, I mean, I was excited. I was excited to be making a game for Xbox Live and for PlayStation Network, right? Because this was our first XBLA PSN game. We were used to making stuff on the Wii, and we were used to making like handheld, which I mean, I love handhelds and I love the Wii. But like being able to do something a little bit mature and something that had an HD resolution and something with a little bit more of an edge. I mean, it was just a really cool project to have. And at WayForward, we were doing stuff, yeah, like Boy and His Blob. And there was a Batman for the Wii, Batman the Brave and the Bold. So it's like all that cartoon stuff was all percolating. And so, so that's how this Rayne project all kind of fit in there. But it was definitely a tonal shift to go from Boy and His Blob to BloodRayne. We wanted to make a BloodRayne game that was like a little bit more, not necessarily like kid-friendly, but something that was a little bit like less NC-17. It was still like very different, and also like making a combat system was really interesting. Like for Batman, we had done a combat system, but like this BloodRayne combat system was much more involved, and being able to work on something like that and something that was a combat platformer combo, it was such a dream. It was just like a really cool project, and we had never had the chance to do something like that. So yeah, it was exciting. I mean, we wanted to make Rayne's abilities more suitable for her as a Dhampir, right? So it's like she would suck blood to regain health, and then she could suck the enemy's blood and infect them, and then use that to like make chain combos. We didn't want sucking blood to just be a health recovery mechanic, so we tried to like integrate it into the gameplay more, and we tried to like really have her use her mobility and her melee and her guns all in conjunction with one another as she progressed throughout these levels. So that was like those were our big goals. At that time, I think I was very into making like those moments, right? Those magical moments where you would stop and take a breather, or where, I mean, that Rayne is supposed to be this character that is the crazy Dhampir in a frenzy of action, but then also we wanted to give her like some degree of refinement or elegance, as shown by her sipping a wine glass and not destroying everybody. So another funny thing is when Rayne falls and Raven like transforms and catches her, which is like exactly the same as Shovel Knight catching Shield Knight. Like it's just like 100% like the same thing. And like those or like the sign knives are also the sign knives. The knives that go to sign pattern became a staple for all future games that we worked on together. Like Double Dragon Neon has knives that shoot, and Shovel Knight has sign knives, and Nina the Hollower will have sign knives as well. But yeah, I mean, I guess we would try to make moments like that, and that was a big thing that we did at WayForward too, right? Like, what are the moments that are going to sell the game? Big explosive moments like Contra with the alien comes out over the thing and stabs it, it's like that kind of stuff. Or the quiet moments like the Boy and Blob like hugging, or like the Boy and Blob in silhouette. We were big on silhouette, right? We got to put the silhouette part in everything, where they're walking from the moon in silhouette, or Rayne is walking in silhouette. In Neon we do silhouette. They're silhouette and they all games. And then Inspector Knight, you know, there's like a flashing lightning part. Oh, and there's a silhouette at the end, right at the very end, before you go to black at the most pivotal climactic moment of the game. It's all just in black, right? Because all follows a pattern. I guess so. And also, I don't want to take credit for those ideas because I'm not even sure if those were mine. I feel like we brainstormed all of those, and it all, you know, things happened on the whiteboard, and people would joke about everything, and I mean it was that magic of working together and joking and having idea and thinking what would be like the coolest, badass, over the top thing for Rayne to do. All of that stuff is what made those moments happen. BloodRayne Betrayal as a side-scrolling platformer where you're trying to be like a cool vampire seems so much like Spectre of Torment to me. And like Spectre Knight can run up the walls and do wall jumps, and like Rayne can do wall jumps, and they both have like a lot of the same. Well, this is a perfect example, and it's funny is that Spectre Knight sits on that, you know, he sits on that gravestone overlooking the moon in that quiet moment of, I mean, that's the exact thing that you were talking about. But yeah, definitely lots of things in common with Spectre of Torment. Yeah, the sign knives is definitely part of it. I mean, Double Dragon Neon is so much like King of Cards, and all of like that goofiness of Batman Brave and the Bold. Like, oh yeah, I would say a lot of that humor and like snappiness rubbed off on us when we ended up doing Double Dragon Neon and Shovel Knight later. Like Shovel Knight and Batman definitely have a lot in common. Yeah, I mean, everything with Mina, right? But everything that's old is new again, and a lot of that darkness and that creepiness that we brought in, and a lot of the scary ideas, but also like the subtle imagery of the chillness, I would say, that's also going to be brought along in Unit. Yeah, so I guess everything really is kind of like an iteration on the previous thing, but each one is pulled in a different direction, and is like a different variation on the thematics as well. We're still trying to take that same tact of making great games that are design first and carrying those gameplay ideas through until we have arrived at whatever we've arrived at. For BloodRayne, it was to make like a crazy hack and slash platformer that's tough as nails, where you can drink blood, blow people up, and shoot them and slice them up, and everything that we worked on when we were making that game, from the dark visuals to working really hard on the blood VFX. I still remember like when she sucks the blood, and it was only like single pixels that were coming out at first, but like in the fluid dynamics in the animation, but everyone was just looking at the monitor like, whoa, this is going to be so cool, the blood's like down here. And so it's like from just like taking all those different tacts, and trying to make something that was just trying to go towards a goal. I mean, same thing, that's like what we were trying to do with Shovel Knight. We wanted to make like an 8-bit game that was built around a mechanic that we thought was exciting, that was in the style of the game that we loved, and all of our decisions, we worked towards achieving that goal. So yeah, I feel like the more that we all work on games together, and the more. And I mean, heck, I'm still working with several of these people today. So yeah, a lot of the BloodRayne Betrayal staff ended up becoming yacht clubbers as well.
I mean, we were like trying to make a hard game. I mean, we definitely did it. It was interesting because I think we sort of like relied on the mechanics. When you grab an enemy and you like can suck their health and get your health back, we sort of like relied on that to be like the modifier, the difficulty. And I think where we like, for a lot of people, we found was like the platforming, where you like didn't provide that avenue. I mean, that's like often how we were thinking about it. Was just like, we can make it tougher, and if we need to, there's like that like valve we can like pull to make it more possible for players, or players can like use that more than they need to. we were really inspired by the kind of like Devil May Cry's Bayonetta's like of the time period, and like having these like ranking systems was like a huge part of those. So I mean, it was like, yeah, really thinking about like how do we make it the kind of game where that's like a huge component of it too. At BloodRayne, I just came off doing a bunch of DS games in a row, so it was really stark. And like one of the first things I was working on was like we're having blood spatter all over the place, right? And like it's using physics, and it's just like not in a million years would that happen on the DS. I felt like I could do anything I wanted to do, you know. I think that was good for like the kind of game or like the franchise too, which is like it's very like over the top and campy or whateverness of it that like vampires are like associated with. Is like you can tap into that really easily. You have this framework which you're operating out of, right? And you're like making decisions based on that. And it's like we're trying to mash like BloodRayne franchise with like 2D brawler and I don't know, our like wacky sensibilities. I mean, for me, it's like bringing as much to the idea as I can from like my point of view, or like, and I guess at the end of the day, it means like making it as fun as possible. So like, I don't know, it's like here's the boss. It's gonna have these 4 attacks, and I'm thinking about like how to string those together in an interesting way, or how, well, what happens if Rayne is on this side of the screen and like, I want to make sure she's like always gonna, be in danger, and just making sure that like the designs that are like put forth, I can like bring creativity into the implementation of them. In a lot of ways too, I feel like BloodRayne felt like a project that was like, and but it felt like oh, we're starting to make something that's like real, like is people are gonna like this kind of thing, It felt like we like started to figure out what we were doing, and I think Double Dragon Inn was like the next step of like, okay, we like actually know what we're doing, and then when we made Shovel Knight, it's like yeah, now we're actually like applying all the knowings, yeah, with like a time schedule that's not 2 months.
Because it was a 2D side scroller, I didn't want to do the style of music that was in the original. It was an awesome soundtrack. Both 1 and 2 had amazing music. They were kind of like, it was a product of its time, but it's ambient, like dark. It had that like perfect dark ambience in there. With a move to more of a beat 'em up, like a slash 'em up. Sean, he said to me, I want this to sound like Luca Turilli, of like, he's like a neoclassical composer, songwriter, metal guy. He sounds like BloodRayne sounds basically, but how am I going to do this on a game soundtrack where I have like a few months to work on it? So I had to go crazy. Basically, I went a little overboard. I learned a lot of guitar solos and stuff. Yeah, it's probably Dusk Falls. That was the first one that I came up with. It was basically the first idea that I had that I wrote down was for the piano arpeggio prelude in Dusk Falls, the very beginning of that song, and the choirs in there and stuff. I was hearing it in my head. When I say I like every kind of music, I'm not just posturing or saying except country or except hip hop or except whatever the hate du jour is. I really like everything. Like any kind of music that people are into, I'm fascinated by the fact that people jam out to it. Like the fact that people are gonna dance to something or consider it their jam, or like play it at their wedding, or that's so powerful to me. And the fact that people are into different genres, I want to know why, sociologically why, culturally why, like what's the history of it, who are the luminaries in the field. So, but yeah, basically, multitudes are a natural part of my listening and intake experience, and my love for music is all the types, and so I like to mix it up. I like to to give it dynamic range, to jump from the highs to the lows, have a real soft piece. That, I mean, it's not just those 3 games. Shantae levels that are spooky themed, like entire other soundtracks that are in that vein. I've done a lot of Castlevania music over the years. It's the spooky, macabre Bach rock. Basically, I try to set a limit on some element of it so that it's not the same as every other genre. In the case of BloodRayne, it was no pipe organs, no time. 0. No pipe organs in this. We're not Toccata and Fugue in D minor. We're not going to go there. We're not Phantom of the Opera. Because everything else is pipe organ, and it's just going to straight up be Castlevania if you do organs. So I went with like choirs instead, and there are elements in there that are that have that gothic-y feel, neoclassical elements, but there's no pipe organs. And there are none in Spectre of Torment either, because it's Nintendo. Who knows what any of those instruments are? It's beeps, except when they're obviously violins or something. But so I've never used pipe organs in a Castlevania track other than an occasional Shantae Labyrinth. So I'm good to go on Mina. It's going to be organy as heck, and that changes the whole tone of the game. It makes it sound like Phantom of the Opera versus Scary Time.
I mean, I guess as a game developer, I measure my life in like games, right? It's like, well, that was so many games ago. We worked on that so many. It's like after BloodRayne, it was Double Dragon, and then like those Mighty games, and that was all before Shovel Knight, and then we've made half a dozen Shovel Knights. Now all this new, and now new stuff, and now Mina. It's just like, yeah, and there's and everything has echoes, right? Like Mina has echoes of BloodRayne.
It's a blast of blood.